Alrighty, good morning everyone. Ken Salvail here. Don Burnett's away on special assignment today. He's assisting Santa Claus this morning at arriving at Byland's Garden Center at 11 a.m. And all the kids and families are welcome to go to Byland's just across the bridge and enjoy that spectacle. It's going to be an exciting day, and the kids, they just love that. They love seeing Santa coming over the hills in the beautiful helicopter. He's got to be pretty busy at this time of year. He's got lots of visits to do before the big day. And it's always a moment of excitement. And so write that down. Make sure if you do have some kids, it's a great opportunity to get out there for 11 o'clock today at Byland's Nurseries. And also, it is looking like it's going to be a little bit of a cold snap coming down the pipes here in the next week or so. And we need to just sort of be aware of that. And that's what I'm going to be talking a little bit about today, is about some things we need to do to prepare for the cold. And, also some tips on what we should be doing, what we shouldn't be doing. We're going to talk a little bit about soils today as well. And we've got a good show, a lot of information. And we'll just get straight to the tip of the week. Alrighty. Now, my tip of the week this week is that during this winter, participate in some gardening classes. There are many classes that happen through the months of January and February, and it gets you revved up and ready to go for spring, and just get you prepared. In gardening, there's so much you can learn, and there's a lot of great teachers here in the Valley. And just to get out and participate in some of these classes. I'll be putting on some classes as well around the end of January and through the month of February, and definitely recommend people participate in that. And also, I have my plant of the week this week, which is the Japanese azalea, the florist azalea. It's one of the most beautiful plants that you will find. It's sold at all different times of the year, throughout the season, but it just seems to be so beautiful to have this thing in your house at this time of year. Beautiful, full bloom, gorgeous plant. Remember to keep your azaleas nice and moist. They do not like to go dry. So keep them moist and enjoy them right through the Christmas season. Very, very nice plant, well worthwhile. So that's my tips and plants for this week. Remember to check KelownaGardens.com. Alrighty, so we do invite your calls today, 862-2525, answering all kinds of questions, or even if you just have some interesting notes about 2016 and your gardening experiences. I know right now a lot of people are doing some storage, putting some of their plants away and some of their vegetables and that sort of thing. Lots of canning hopefully has been completed this fall, and I'm always interested in the canning process, and so anybody that does have any tips on canning today would be really nice to hear about that. It's one of those treats in the wintertime to be able to open a jar of cherries or pickles or whatever it is. It's just always nice to have the beautiful fresh taste of canned vegetables and fruits, especially ones you've grown yourself. Definitely gives you that, gives you a warm feeling to know that it's products that you've actually grown yourself. Now, on another note, definitely getting excited here about the Christmas season. And here on the AM 1150 Garden Show, we do have our Christmas show that comes up each year, and it's the Saturday before Christmas. So this year it's the 17th. And on that show, we'll be having quite an assortment of special guests that'll be calling in. And also, we just invite everybody to call in and wish your loved ones a Merry Christmas, and just to chat about the season again, about 2016. And it's a great show. We have it each year, and generally we'll have Don's dad Ernie on CD, and we'll play a few of his songs, which is always a highlight of the Christmas show. And again, we do just make that note so that make sure we all tune in on the 17th, which will be it'll be a great show. It always is interesting. On again, another note, this weather is about to change, and we've enjoyed this lovely mild weather right through the month of November. and I've particularly enjoyed it. It's just been great as far as from a landscaping standpoint. Our company, KHS Landscape Design Build, has been very, very busy, and we're just basically I always say we're shutting things down, but we do keep at least a skeleton crew available through the wintertime for doing different types of work and that sort of thing. So we're planning on doing our main pruning schedule through the months of sort of late January through the month of February. And so we are inviting people to call in and maybe just make a note if you're interested in having some pruning done, whether it's fruit trees or shade trees or even just shrubbery or yard cleanups, that sort of thing. We do all that kind of work from a horticultural standpoint, of course. And we do the correct techniques and do our best to take care of our customers. And I'll leave a phone number on that if you'd like to phone in anytime, or you can send an email to kelownagardens.com, and through that we can make a connection and look at doing some pruning. In the wintertime is the best time when it comes to, say, ornamental pruning or even fruit tree pruning. It's that time when we can see all the branches and the frameworks of the trees, so we know that we can go in and do a nice job and get that pruning done. I tend to wait till after, really towards the end of January, when sort of the brunt of winter is over. We kind of look at the forecast, and the month of February is generally a great month for doing pruning. So anytime really around the end of January. So we just watch the weather, of course. And that's a time when you can have a look at a tree and you can see what's in there. We look at removing the what they call either the 4Ds, the dead, diseased, or dying wood, or damaged wood even. So that's what you do with ornamental pruning. We always have to keep the two completely separated, and the two are ornamental pruning compared to fruit tree pruning. So there's nothing really too similar about the two. With fruit trees, you're really doing whatever it takes to create a tree that's very easy to pick and easy to spray and easy to manage and not getting too tall and kind of, broad spreading type of tree. And this makes again, just an easily managed tree. And the other thing that happens is that when we cut a fruit tree really hard, meaning we remove a lot of the wood off the tree during the winter months, this really encourages a massive amount of sucker growth in the spring. So that it's actually, we do it on purpose to encourage a massive growth, and the massive growth produces a massive amount of foliage, which produces a massive amount of sugar, of course, which we want to go directly into our fruit. So there is a specific game plan there when it comes to fruit tree pruning, that we prune them hard to get the massive growth. And so keeping that in mind, when you do prune other plants or trees really hard, you get massive growth. So that's why we don't really prune ornamental trees aggressively, because we don't really want massive growth. We don't want them to get bigger or faster in a lot of cases. This is the thing that is confusing for most people, is that we don't really prune trees to manage their size. We prune them to make them better. And that's one of the key tips that I think that anybody who does participate in pruning classes, or people who are arborists or in that, and people who really know about pruning, they really, really do have to watch the way they prune and how much they prune. And again, we don't prune trees to make them smaller. We prune them to make them better. All right, just going to go to the phone lines now. We do have a caller on the line. Is it Linda on the line? Good morning, Linda.
Good morning, Ken. You sound as if you're in great form this morning, even though you're on your own.
There you go. Thanks, Linda.
Two things. I'd like your permission to give a quick plug for the artisan market here in Peachland. Would that be okay?
Oh, absolutely.
All right. This morning, starting at 10 at the historic Yellow Schoolhouse across from Swim Bay on Beach Avenue, the Visitor Information Center has an artisan market, and this is an artisan market like no other. We have over 20 high-end artisans, everything from fabulous baking to a lady that comes in and has wonderful custom children's clothes, and she sews to order, too. We have award-winning photographers and cards and all manner of wonderful gift ideas, and we have wine tasting.
Ooh.
And and it's really quite exciting because this time, for the first time, Indigenous Winery is also going to be there.
Oh,
and
nice.
I'm really quite looking forward to seeing what they have on their display. So that's today from 10 until 3 at the Yellow Schoolhouse on Beach Avenue, right in Peachland. Lots of parking, and it's a beautiful day, so I encourage anybody that wants to go out for a drive to come here and enjoy our market.
Well, it sounds fabulous, and it is a gorgeous day. It's going to be nice and sunny. The sun's going to be out, so it will be one of those opportunities before the brunt of winter hits to enjoy an outdoor event.
And, well, it's indoors.
Oh, it's indoors,
It's indoors, but you can get all your Christmas shopping done in one place because the jewelry is fantastic, the photographs, the paintings, everything.
That sounds fabulous.
Now, I have a question, and
Sure.
I'll ask it of you, and probably I'll just hang up and listen to your answer.
Okay.
I have a lime tree. It's in a 13-inch pot. It keeps on kicking out marvelous blooms. It smells wonderful. It produces all these seedless little limes, way too many for the tree to bear.
Right.
But recently, it has developed a huge leaf drop. What can I do to stop it from dropping any more leaves and to encourage new leaf growth? It does have a grow light over it.
Oh, good. Well, that's fabulous, Linda. That is something that happens in the fall sometimes, is that naturally you will get a little bit of leaf drop that sort of is casting off old leaves, so it's making room for some new leaves, which is sometimes a normal process. But sometimes there's some sort of an event that may have happened. It could have been excessively, maybe a little bit. Do you find you keep it a little bit on the dry side, or?
Well, actually, I water according to the moon. Just before full moon and just before new moon, I just soak them. And the lemon tree right beside it, small pot, almost the same height, but a younger tree, there's no sign of leaf drop. There's nothing. It's just absolutely green. But the lime tree seems to be suffering, and I don't understand why.
Seems to be something, yeah. So, well, make sure that they do dry out between the waterings, but it sounds like your pot size is good, because your pot size isn't too large, and sometimes that's an issue that we have, is really big pots, and then when we water them, they don't adequately dry between waterings. And with this size pot, they should be fine, because that's one of the things, is that when we water, we want to actually occasionally set the entire plant into the sink, if it's possible, and to run the tepid water through that soil so that the water actually runs right in through the top and out the bottom, and it pulls, as it goes through, it percolates and it pulls fresh air in behind the water, and so it replenishes all the fresh gases and the fresh oxygen into the soil. And at the same time, it leaches away salts that would be potentially a little bit of an issue with some of these plants.
Would an excessive amount of salt have the leaves turning yellow?
It could, yeah. It causes a real inability for plants to properly uptake moisture and water and nutrients. So what happens then is you actually may see nutrient deficiencies, even though there might be nutrients in the soil, but the plant's just unable to uptake it because there's just too many salts in the soil. It's actually pulling moisture and water right out of the roots of the plant. So the plant can show all kinds of symptoms, even symptoms of drought, even though they're not really wet or not really dry. So I would put the thing right into the sink and give it a really good leach, and then after that, give it a long period of time to dry out. And so with your cycles that you're following, is if you do hit a moon cycle that is fairly soon after you do this leaching, you might just skip that one and go right to the next one. And because of the, I know you have a grow light and whatnot, but it's pretty typical down in some of the subtropic areas where these naturally grow that they'll get long periods of drought through the winter months. So that would be sort of normal for them to go a bit on the dry side.
Okay, so if I was to forbear watering and then do the leaching, it's heavy to move that wretched thing, but it'll go into the laundry tub. I will requisition one of my friends with muscles.
Yeah, there you go.
And what about pruning off the top to encourage more leaf growth from a little further down, because some of the lower branches are starting to look a little bearish?
Yeah, they're probably not getting as much light down there, but that would be the only, by pruning out upper growth, all you would be doing there is allowing more light to penetrate down to the bottom of the plant. The more foliage we leave on the plant, the more branches we leave on the plant, the more factory that the plant has to create sugars and energy to grow. So by cutting it back doesn't necessarily encourage it to grow. But one thing, though, is when you do this leaching, if you give it a good leach and then let it dry out and you notice that it actually shoots out some new growth on the tips, then you know for sure that was the issue for sure. All right.
Ken, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Linda.
Have a wonderful day.
You too. Bye for now. Bye-bye. Yeah, there you go. So out to Peachland today to participate in the market there. It sounds like it's going to be a great day, and we'll mention that again as the show goes on. All right, we're going to take a short break. We do invite your calls, 862-2525 to get through this morning, and we'll be back right after these messages with more AM 1150 Garden Show. Alrighty, welcome back to the show. Ken Salvail here today. Don Burnett's away. He's on special assignment. You never know. He might even call in today. We just don't know. But what he's doing is he's over at Bylands assisting with Santa Claus. Santa's going to be arriving there today at about 11 a.m. by helicopter, and it's quite the spectacle if you haven't participated in that in the past. Fabulous for the kids. They will actually have Santa flying in straight from the North Pole, of course, and he'll come in and land right there in just off from the parking area, and it's quite amazing. The kids just go nuts. It's fabulous. They have all kinds of sales and things going on there at Bylands today as well, and we highly recommend that you participate in Santa's arrival at 11 o'clock today. All right, it is going to be a beautiful day today, and for anybody who does want to head out to Peachland today, out just down by the lake there, and the bright yellow Heritage House is what you're looking for, and the market is going to be happening there today, and so you want to head that way and participate. Lots of great vendors and a great opportunity to participate in some high quality goods and wares, including some art and wine, apparently. So that makes it all worthwhile. All right, today we're talking about a bunch of different things, and of course, with this cold weather coming this upcoming week, we do recommend that you double check, make sure that all your hoses are removed from your taps around your house. This was a tip we gave out probably about 3 or 4 weeks ago. But of course, since then, the weather's been so mild, I think some people have actually been using their hoses and things. But when you do have a hose that's attached to your house, there's generally not always, but often there's a frost-free tap there. And if the tap is filled with water with the hose attached, well, then you're going to run into some problems, because when it does get really cold, they're saying possibly, beyond -10 this week, so it's going to be pretty cold. That can actually freeze the water inside of a frost-free tap if it's trapped in there, and it can cause damage inside the house. So you don't want to flood in the basement, so be careful of that. Get those hoses off while the weather's still warm and let that water drain out of the frost-free tap. And then your hoses as well is just empty them out, let them drain. Because if later on in the winter, if it is dry for a period of time, you might want to use those hoses. And of course, you don't want them filled with frozen water. And it makes it really nice to have. So we always recommend that you drain those hoses out and have them ready to go for when you do need it. The mulching of roses, all roses love to be mulched in the fall. It's sort of something that we do. We generally take a coarse compost product. There's a few different products available, but of course Nature's Gold is one that we do talk about. And it's a chunky sort of a composted product that works really well. It insulates well. And we bury up our roses about around 18 inches high is kind of ideal, but a little less than that is fine. But it creates this nice little insulated area at the base of the rose, and it also feeds, because it's this beautiful compost, it's always feeding the roots and keeping them happy and moist through the wintertime. And so because we've got the base of the plant protected, you see these stems that are up above that, like if the winter is not too cold, well, those stems come through no problem. There's no issues. But if it does get really cold, we get a really cold snap, we might see dieback on those stems. So if we do get dieback, they'll die back down to your mulch, and that's it. So, of course, in the spring, you cut off anything that's dead, and anything that was buried under the mulch, of course, will be all happy and ready to go, and they will be starting to grow and do their thing again. So it's just something we do. A lot of roses don't really require, special winterization, because many of them are very, very hardy to begin with. So what I say is just mulch all the roses, and you don't have to worry if you're not sure what the name of the rose is or whether it's hardy or not. We just mulch them all. They all enjoy it. They love it. And then in the spring, you just rake out that mulch and spread it a bit, and you're good to go. The rose is happy as can be. All right, we're just going to go back to the phone lines. We have Carol on the line. Good morning, Carol.
Good morning, Ken. Is it too early to say Merry Christmas?
It is not too early.
Anyway, I was just wondering, you were mentioning about pruning fruit trees earlier, and you mentioned that pruning them back and then letting the suckers grow to produce sugar that goes into the fruit. Mm-hmm. So do you leave the suckers alone in the summer?
Yeah, you don't really have to remove them. What some people do is they'll thin them out a little bit just to let more light through, but
right.
it just depends on the tree. So here's what I suggest is that some of the soft fruits, especially peaches and cherries, those two really like to be pruned hard. You cut them hard, and the harder you cut them, the more they grow back. So it's just a natural reaction that the plants have. And so these particular ones, the cherries and peaches, really like to be cut fairly hard, so they produce this massive amount of foliage. And it really does work. And then you never really have to remove them, because that's the system. That's what we're trying to do, is get a lot of foliage to produce a lot of fruit, and nice sweet fruit, of course.
Okay. So like for an apricot tree or a plum tree, so you would let the suckers grow in the summer. So then the next winter, or when you're pruning them the next season, would you remove those suckers then, the old suckers? Yeah.
You remove it because you don't want the tree to just continue getting bigger and bigger and bigger. We always want to keep it at about this medium-sized tree. So each year, all the suckers would go, and you cut them right off, or right off flush to the stem. So these are vertical growing shoots. And then the wood that you have on the base part of the tree, or the main framework of the tree, you keep training it to be sort of horizontal, easy to pick. You don't really need a ladder. Sometimes it can be nice and low. And then if you do get branches that grow, especially with cherry trees because they get so big, sometimes you get these huge stems that grow right up the middle of the tree. And they're not really required, so you can actually remove those during the pruning period too, and just maintain this sort of lower branching structure that's easy to deal with. So
okay, that sounds good.
Yeah,
okay,
and if you do want to remove a few suckers, some people do. It's not necessary, but if you do them in the summer, you see they don't respond much. So that means you cut those suckers out, and they don't do much.
No.
But so that's kind of a good thing. But the next year, you're cutting them hard, and you want the suckers to produce the sugar.
Oh, okay. Well, that answers my question. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thanks for calling, Carol.
Have a great day.
Yeah. Merry
Bye-bye.
Christmas. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah. So it's really is one of these really interesting things that the machine there, we call it the factory. The factory is the tree, is the leaves themselves. And the more leaves you have, the more sugar you have. And that's what you want, which you don't necessarily want that on a shade tree or ornamental tree. What the key with ornamental trees, and I'll just move straight into that category, is that you see an ornamental tree, when you prune it, you don't want to distort its natural shape. Every tree knows what it's supposed to look like and knows what its shape is, and it has this natural shape that's all designed around water collection. So when it rains, the rain hits the tree and the leaves on the top get the water on the raindrops on those leaves. They drop from leaf to leaf to leaf to leaf all the way down the tree, very carefully guided so that all the water falls in this small little area around the base of the tree called the drip line. Many people have heard of the drip line. Well, this drip line happens on almost all trees, and the tree is trying to develop that. You know, if you distort the shape of the tree by pruning it too much, well, you're eliminating this natural ability of the tree to collect its own water. And so what we want to do is let trees be. When you prune a shade tree or ornamental tree, you shouldn't really, when you're done, you shouldn't really be able to tell that you've pruned it. The shape should be the same when you're done. All you're doing is removing the dead wood, removing stuff that's maybe diseased or maybe where branches are rubbing, or if the tree's a little lopsided, sometimes you can take one branch off on one side and it really, balances the whole tree out. And that's really all you do. So almost like less is more. And because of this discussion we just had about fruit trees, the more we prune them, the faster they grow and the bigger they grow and the more leaves they grow. So we don't really necessarily want that for a shade tree. With a shade tree, we just do minimal pruning so that the thing just kind of cruises at the perfect rate, not too fast, not too slow, just a nice medium gradual rate. And that's what we want. And that's our goal when it comes to shade tree pruning. All right, we're going to take another short break here. We do invite your calls, 862-2525 to get through to me this morning. And I'll be right back with more AM 1150 Garden Show. Alrighty, welcome back to the show. Ken Salvail here. Don Burnett's away today. Just going to talk a little bit about poinsettias. Poinsettias. It's one of those beautiful plants that we have through the Christmas season. And I'm just going to throw a tip out there right now that we kind of know it's going to get cold this week. Actually, we do know. It's going to get below freezing substantially. And so, as a tip, if you do want to pick up some poinsettias and you're thinking of, some people like to decorate with them, so they'll have, maybe some little groupings of them. It's a lot easier to transport them before the temperatures drop. Poinsettia is very susceptible to frost injury and cold injury, so it's just something that I suggest. You can still buy them at any time through the season. It's just that you have to be very careful with them and race from the store to the car and make sure they're in a big bubble wrap, a bubble of plastic. We used to sell thousands of them every year, and so we'd have these huge plastic bags. So we'd put the whole plant inside a plastic bag, and we'd even blow into the bag and then tie it off at the top so we'd have a big bubble of air, and we'd grab it from the base of the pot, keep that poinsettia safe, and then transfer it from the garden center into the car, and off we'd go. And so that protection is really necessary, especially when it's really cold. But like I say, if you get out now, just before this cold snap, it's just a little bit easier. The plants will transport a little bit nicer, and they really don't like the cold. So that's just another great gardening tip for you today. Full of gardening tips. And it sounds like we've got somebody on the line here. Hello, do we have somebody on the line waiting?
Oh, is that you, Ken?
Oh, is that Santa?
Yeah, Santa Claus here.
Hey, Santa, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing just fine. Got up real early this morning, and I got my reindeers already, and they were kind of having trouble. So what we've done, Ken, is we've got a helicopter ready here. We're just warming the helicopter up now, and we're going to head to Byland's Garden Center. 11 o'clock this morning, we're going to be landing, and I invite all the little kids to come out and see Santa. I'm looking so forward to seeing you.
Sounds pretty exciting. We haven't heard from you for about a year. Have you been busy?
Well, busy. More and more kids. They need me to help them out at Christmas to make them happy, and I am working hard at that. And before you know it, Christmas will be here, and I'll be coming down that chimney, and I'll be seeing you. But if you want to say hello, this morning is a good time to come to Byland's Garden Center. 11 o'clock, I'll be flying in by helicopter.
Well, that sounds pretty exciting. What time? Yeah, you already said you're going to be there. And is there lots of parking there and other events going on? Do you know?
Lots of parking. And I think Maria Byland has a whole bunch of specials. There's food. There's all sorts of things to take part in. A sleigh ride, a nice sleigh ride, a wagon hay ride, they call it. And they give you a ride around the nursery. It's kind of fun there.
Ah, fabulous. Well, it sounds like a fabulous event. And I better let you go. Get back at her there.
I'll get my helicopter going here. We'll see you at 11.
Okay, thanks, Santa. Take care.
Bye-bye now. Merry Christmas.
Bye-bye. Merry Christmas. There you go. Just like that, and I'm sure he'll be seeing Don. I think Don was helping Maria with that sleigh ride, so that's pretty cool, and he gets to meet him in person, and you can meet him too. Just head down before 11. Be ready for that, the chopper, the Santa chopper, coming in at 11 at Bylands. There you go. Well, on that note, we've been talking about things for Christmas, and of course, the poinsettias are always, I love poinsettias. I like all the different colors, and I like the more the merrier. I think they're just one of the best decorating plants that you can use around the Christmas season, of course. And I mentioned the azaleas off the top of the show. It was my plant of the week was the florist azalea or Japanese azalea. Beautiful plants, full of flowers and just last and last. Those plants like to be cool and moist all the time, whereas the poinsettias like to be warmer and a little bit on the dry side, like not totally bone dry, but just a little bit on the dry side. And it helps to keep the roots a little bit healthy. They sometimes are subject to root rot, so we want to be careful of that and get the most out of our poinsettias. They're just one of those best plants of the holiday season. All right, we have talked a little bit about a few different topics here today. So we talked about removing your hoses from your taps. We talked about our Christmas show that's coming up on the 17th of December. So make sure everybody tunes in for that. We've got a lot of special guests calling in. And we talked about Santa that's happening at Bylands today. He's arriving by helicopter at 11. And we're also talking about houseplants, and we talked a little bit about leaching the plants earlier as Linda had called in about her lime tree, and definitely a good idea with all houseplants. They really like to be sat in the sink and ran this nice tepid water, room temperature water, through that soil about every month or so. So, if you haven't been doing it, that's something you'll want to do. But remember that in the wintertime, we always have to let the plants dry out a little bit more than normal through the winter. They're just not using as much water. So if you do any of this leaching, make sure you let it go a long time. They're really quite dry after that. And then you'll see them sort of rebound and respond, and they really do appreciate that. The Christmas trees, fresh Christmas trees, there's lots of them around, and we always give our tips on how to keep your Christmas trees nice and fresh. And so with Christmas trees, the key thing is you can buy them early, and especially with cold weather again coming. I gave that tip about poinsettias and getting them early, just so they're easier to transport. But if you can buy your Christmas tree early as well and get it home and get it into the garage where it's cool, and you can stand it up and you can open them up and they start to fluff out a little bit, but keeping them cool, just like they're in a refrigerator. That's what garages are perfect for that. And then what you can also do is if you don't want to put it up till maybe a little bit later or whatever, that's fine. Some people even will make a fresh cut on the bottom of the stump of the tree and actually stand it in a bucket of water while it's sitting out in the garage, and that gives it something to drink while you're waiting. And then when it does come time to bring them in, you make another fresh cut about 1.5 inches off the bottom of the stump, and that opens up the pores, and then you get it right into some really hot water. And the hotter the water, the better. Usually we even use a kettle of really nice hot water, and that softens up the sap and gets those trees drinking up that water right away. And then each time you water the the Christmas tree through the season, it's always use hot water each time, and that really, really helps quite a bit. So that's a Christmas tree tip, and looks like we're going to go back to the phone lines. We have Nick on the line. Good morning, Nick.
Good morning, Ken. I'd like to know about milkweed.
Mm-hmm.
How high does it grow, and how does it flower all summer?
Yeah, so you're thinking of the butterfly flower or butterfly weed, milkweed, that one. It's that the butterflies like?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's Asclepias tuberosa is one, and Asclepias speciosa. There's those two sort of common ones. And the tuberosa one is a little more decorative. It has a little bit stronger bloom. And they're going to be growing about around that 24 inches high. And they come in a couple different colors. You can get some that are a little bit from the reds to the orange sort of tones. And there might even be a pink one available.
Which is more attractive to the butterfly?
I don't think the color matters so much. They just love the milkweed. That's their favorite flower.
Okay. And next one is fall fertilizer. Is it too late to apply it for the lawn?
Well, yeah, it's a little bit late to, and this is the only reason, is that the fertilizers will release according to temperature. So you see, if you apply it right now, it's just going to sit there till spring. So that's not a bad thing. It's just an awareness thing that, if you wanted to just leave it for now until spring, and then in the spring, you cut the lawn a little extra short. I mean, we should have it cut short right now, but, cutting it shorter in the spring and then applying that fertilizer as a sort of a start to the season, you have let's say a little bit, let's say you're sort of sustaining those little prills, the little fertilizer pellets. Mm-hmm. And rather than, say, sitting over the wintertime, there'll be some degradation. Of course, it happens. They'll break down a little bit over the winter. So, applying it in the spring, you're sort of, they don't really need much for nutrient between now and spring. But if you can get out there around the end of February or early March, that would be ideal to get that fertilizer on. See, if we would have maybe done it about a month ago, we would have had, at least some effect. But even with that, generally your fall fertilizers are applied in October. Okay.
And the next one is blackberries. Mm-hmm. I had a real good crop this year. Can I expect the same for this next year?
Yeah, blackberries are fabulous because they produce so much each year, and every year they produce more and more. And what it is that any of the growth that grows this year will produce berries next year. And even some of the older shoots that had fruit on them this year may also produce fruit next year as well. So they'll send out some new lateral growth, and any of those laterals, the little side branches, that's where the fruit is going to come. So when you go and have a look at your plants right now, if you see a lot of those laterals, little side shoots, then you're going to get a lot of fruit next year.
Okay, now should I prune it in the spring and give it a little bit of light? Because it's just one mass of green.
Oh, is it? Yeah. With blackberries, they have this tendency. How old are your plants? Are they a few years?
About 5 or 6 years old.
Oh, okay. So they must be pretty vigorous then, eh? They're growing fast?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what we try to do with that is that we try to keep them under control. That's the whole name of the game. So often we'll attach them to some sort of a trellis or a fence or something that we can attach them to. And we try to keep them sort of two-dimensional, meaning that we would, like trellis them, long and skinny. And then whenever these new shoots come from the bottom, they'll send out these big, long, skinny shoots, and that's your future wood. That's your future production. So you attach those long, skinny shoots to your fence line or to your trellis. And then what that'll do is that'll give you your base framework for the future. And then in the springtime, after you attach these, you just cut the ends of them off, of these long shoots, and they'll start to produce these side lateral shoots that'll just be unbelievable fruit production. And the old ones, if the old ones get really old, they might produce for a season or two, and then you usually have to cut them out and let the new ones come in.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ken.
You're welcome. Thanks for calling in.
And Merry Christmas to you.
Yeah, Merry Christmas, Nick.
Okay.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Yeah, that's a fabulous part of growing blackberries is that they don't mess around. They grow, and there's not much you can do about it. They grow pretty fast. Grow these long, long canes, and they're fabulous. Training them onto wires or onto a fence of some sort is a really, really nice way to go. Now, is that... All right, and that's looks like Olive is on the line. Good morning, Olive.
Oh, good morning, Ken.
Good morning.
I wondered if you could please tell me what I should be doing with my old kale that I've still got growing. It's just kind of spindly, like tall, and it's just the leaves aren't that big anymore. Excuse me, I'm not talking very good here.
That's okay.
And I just wondered, should I be cutting those, take those right out and have new plants, or can I use them again this winter?
Yeah, well, that's a great question because kale plants really like to grow when it's cold out, and they tend to survive often right through the winter.
Oh.
So what we do is we just harvest the leaves off of them.
Okay.
And every time we harvest them, we just wash them up, and some people will dry them in the oven, and crush them up and make them like a crushed, almost like a crushed parsley, And then you can put that in soups, or you can sprinkle it on salads and things, and that just has all the beautiful nutrients of kale. And so there's many uses, so drying it is a nice way to utilize it.
Yeah.
And then out in the garden, the plant that you've taken leaves off of it keeps growing over the winter just a little, and it produces a little bit more leaves. And then in the spring, they'll usually grow again and sometimes flower. And the flowers are really quite nice. Like, I like to eat the flowers as they're blooming. They're kind of just tasty. They're spicy, really nice. So that's something I do. And then by the time you get into probably around the end of May, they're completely done, and you have new ones coming on. And just remember that even the new ones, the young plants, they like to start really early in the season. So you can get them out in March, quite early, and they like to be cold and even freezing a little bit. They're pretty happy campers when it comes to cold weather.
Well, mine are on a patio, just in a large box.
Yeah.
And so all the same ideas that you said apply to them.
Oh, sure. Yeah, you bet.
And so in the spring, like if I did leave them, and I don't water them very much then, or?
You just water them as needed. They like a little bit of moisture, but they're a pretty tough plant. They're good. Yeah,
they are. Yeah, I've had lots of good
good success, eh?
Yeah, really, yeah.
Well, that's fabulous. It's one of these things that when you have that opportunity to grow a little bit of something, especially kale, because it's so nutritious, and you just eat a little bit here or there. I'll just pick off a leaf and chew on it just for the, I love the taste of it, and I know it's full of nutrients.
Oh, yeah, it's great, except I'm afraid of bugs, so.
Yeah, you want to give them a little wash, and there's always aphids or something on them, so just give them a wash. That's all you have to do, and they're good to go.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Ken.
Okay, Olive. Well, thanks for calling.
Thank you.
Yeah, Merry Christmas. Bye-bye.
Merry Christmas. Bye-bye.
Yeah. There you go. And yeah, kale is one of my favorites. I just love it, and it's great plant, easy to grow, loves the cold temperatures, and either in spring or fall or winter. All right, we're going to take another short break, and we'll be back with more AM 1150 Garden Show. Alrighty, welcome back to the show. That was a good break there we just had. I hope you've been writing down your questions, so you can call in 862-2525 to get through today. And it is a nice day out there. It's sunny off and on. There's a few clouds, but it's not bad. For December, it's pretty darn good. So we're pretty lucky for sure right now. They say that next week is going to be a bit cold. So let's think about that a little bit. I mentioned about, maybe getting a little bit of mulch, a few bags of mulch. We've often mentioned in the past that if you have a few bags of mulch, just pre-bagged, like the 40-liter bags or whatever, and just have them in your garage. And then if you need them to protect something, then like we're getting a cold snap this week, well, you can get out and just dump it onto the plants, and it's good to go, and it's thawed in your garage. So keep that in mind, and remember to get those hoses off. I keep mentioning that. It's really an important thing to disconnect hoses from any of your houses and get them drained. Very important. All right, so we've talked a lot about Christmas stuff and poinsettias and Christmas trees as well. With the Christmas trees, there's lots available. There's really, you can go out and get them right now. You don't have to wait too long. I like to get them when they're not too frozen, but anytime, if you do get a tree, I always like to bring it in and kind of have it get used to a little bit warmer temperature. So that's, again, if you do have a garage, that's a nice place to bring it in and put it in the garage for a day or so, or a day or two at least. And then it's cool. It's like in a refrigerator. Keep in mind that your Christmas tree is like a cut flower in a way. And if you think of that as long as it's kept cold, it'll just last and last and last. But as soon as you bring it inside where it's warm and the temperatures are higher, the plant immediately starts to go into a bit of distress, and it survives, for a period of time, but it only has a limited life expectancy. And so with that in mind, just like a cut flower, a few things that we do is if we were to pick fresh cut flowers, we always make a fresh cut on the bottom of the flower as we put it into the vase. And that's what you would do with your Christmas tree as well, is take a saw and cut off a couple inches off the bottom of the stump and open up the pores and then get it into really hot water. The thing with a cut flower is that if you can put it into hot water and it speeds up the rate at which the plant opens its blossom. But in the case of a Christmas tree, it opens up the pores and allows the water to flow into the tree. So we often mention that to make sure that we're keeping you're holding whatever you have for a water holding. There's so many different types of stands now. It's hard to even describe what it is, but it's like a little holding container at the bottom of the tree. Is that we try not to ever let it go dry. Because if it goes dry, then it seals off the pores in the bottom of the tree and, again, shortens the life of the tree. So try to keep it wet. Once you made that fresh cut, nice hot water, and then every time you water with hot water. If you can, any water is better than no water, but if you can use hot water out of the tap, that's the way to go for sure. Hot as you can get it. And that really helps the tree pull up that water and get it into the system. As long as it's getting water, it'll last for quite a long time. So that's a good idea. Now, again, if it is going to get cold this upcoming week, and so if you do get a tree that's frozen solid, when you bring it in, you want to gradually thaw it. So again, you can put it into the garage where it's cool. And then, again, you can use buckets of hot water to thaw the stem out. So if you have a nice bucket of really nice hot water and you just stand the tree in that'll thaw out the main trunk, and it'll open up the pores as well. But the top of the tree, the actual needles, will be cool because they're in the garage. And this gives it a nice sort of transition from inside to outside, and then gets them ready to be brought into the house where it's really warm. The typical house temperature is really, really hot. When it comes to a tree, an outdoor tree like a fir tree or whatever, to come indoors is a fair bit of a shock to go into that kind of a temperature. It's just too warm for this time of the year. But they do pretty good, and they survive well, and they certainly have that beautiful fragrance that we love, and it's just fun to have a real tree. I would say probably most people go with artificial trees these days, which are fine, and they're really lovely. I have an artificial tree, actually, and the artificial trees, what I like about them is I kind of pick them to fit my spot, and then you don't ever have to worry about trying to find another one that's going to fit that spot. I kind of like a slender tree. So if I have a slender tree, then, I know it's going to fit in the corner. So that's what we did, was purchase an actual artificial tree that is slender. And it fits in the spot every time without any kind of issues. And so anyway, that's a fun part of Christmas. And the thing today really is that Santa Claus is arriving at Byland's Nurseries at about 11 a.m. today. And so if you do have kids around, you want to get them out there. And it's quite the spectacle to see Santa arrive by helicopter. And, it's all part of this Christmas season to ignite the excitement. And it's here now, so we can move forward. And remember the poinsettia tip that I gave about picking them up earlier rather than waiting when it's really, really cold. As it gets really cold, it's a little harder to transport them from A to B. So just as an awareness thing, they don't like the cold much, so give them a little extra protection. Again, there's no harm in getting either your Christmas tree or your poinsettia early, as it's just a nice thing to have around, and get them in soon, and you don't have to worry about the cold so much. Now, other things we were talking about earlier in the show, I mentioned just off the top of the show about I wanted to talk just a little bit about soils. And, especially as we're moving into the houseplant category, because we are moving indoors, we've got plants indoors, we've moved outdoor plants into storage areas, that sort of thing. But indoors, we have our houseplants and things, and sometimes they suffer a little bit. And as far as soil goes, you have to kind of know the plant. And I always suggest that whenever you get a plant, is try to identify it, if there's any possible way, to get the botanical name so that you know exactly what it is. And then you can research it and find out where it comes from and what are the conditions that plant actually lived in. Like, where does it come from? Some plants, they just come from these deep tropical rainforests where they grow on the bottom of the forest floor. It's kind of really low light and really wet all the time. And, this is something we need to know. Or, on the other hand, they can be on tropical hillsides or mountains where it's quite rocky and dry, and almost you get a lot of cacti growing in those areas, very hot, dry conditions. And so, if you have that as a houseplant, you want to know that. You want to know what to do and know that you're not going to be overwatering it or giving it too much love. Sometimes they're better to ignore some plants. But then when you have plants in containers, you know that sooner or later they need to be transplanted, not always. And that's why I started with that, was that, like, if we have plants like orchids and things, they'll often live in a pot for years and years without any need for transplanting. But other plants that grow big, that get to be larger plants and a little faster growing, often need to be transplanted. And in that case, we always use a quality potting soil. So in the past few years, in the past 10 or 20 years, they've really learned how to grow plants in pots, and they've learned how to design these potting soils so that they really, really work. They're just they have this specific sort of formula that they shoot for when they develop these soils, so that there's lots of oxygen in the soil, but there's also lots of water holding ability. So when you do get these soils, you're getting something that's really designed specifically for container growing. And so when you do your transplanting, if you can, use a quality potting soil. And, there's a lot of different brand names. I always suggest to check with your local garden centers and ask them, which is your top quality potting soil. I will use typically the best I can get. And then, only transplant when you have to. Good transplanting timing is usually after Christmas, after the Christmas season. And that's when, usually in January, at least here, we'll get a little bit of winter that happens typically. We'll get some snow and some cold weather. But then around the end of January, the skies start to open up. We get a little bit more sunlight. The days are starting to get a little bit longer. And as we move in through February, that's often a good time to do transplanting of your houseplants. So again, just start with a quality potting soil, something that will work well. And they always say just go up like one pot size at a time. So if you have an 8-inch pot, I think the next pot size from that is a 10-inch. It just depends on the style of the pot, but you just go one pot size. And the general reason for that is that the roots have to grow out, and they want to grow out and hit the side of the pot. And once they do hit the side of the pot, they've got this perfect environment there of moisture on one side with the soil and an oxygen gap right there along the edge of the pot, where they love to have lots of oxygen. And so they'll grow around the outside of the pot. And, as soon as they hit the outside of the pot, they tend to grow and they start to get healthier. If you put them in a humongous pot, and if you've got, say, 6 or 8 inches to go, unless it's a tree or something that's really fast growing, plants will sometimes suffer. They'll go through a period of root rot, and they'll struggle to get out to the edge of that pot where they can freely breathe. So again, the general rule is just go one pot size at a time. And if you're having an issue with weight, some plants are really heavy, you might want to put some rocks in the bottom of the pot, not so much for drainage, but just to hold the thing up. So that's, I think, a reasonable tip, is something to think about. And Yeah, so that's basically it. But I really want you to call in today, 862-2525. Give me a call. Anything at all, just chatting about Santa or about Christmas or about your gardens or your lawns or what to do with this cold snap coming, or a little bit about pruning, whatever you'd like. But make some notes. We're going to take a short break here and make some notes. You can give us a call, 862-2525, and we'll be back right after these messages with more AM 1150 Garden Show. It's time to go back or straight to the phone lines. We have Rick on the line. Good morning, Rick.
Morning, Ken. You're flying solo. No wingman today, eh?
No wingman today. Just it's a little lonely here, but I have the listening audience to keep me company. So thanks for calling.
I was going to say, you got us. You can't get any better than that.
That's right.
Question, you may have answered this before, but I still have some leaves around my yard. Mm-hmm. My neighbor across the street, he was cleaning up his leaves, and he's going to take it to the dump, and I said, take it to the dump. He said, no. I'm going to leave it in the container over the winter, and it turns into soil.
Yes.
Now, if I fill up my green bin, do I have to do anything, or can I just leave it?
Yeah, you don't really do anything. You just it's called the leaf molding. We talked about leaf molding in the last couple shows here a little bit, and it's just really just stacking the leaves into a garbage can of some sort or one of these leaf bins, yeah. and you just let it sit over the winter time, and you don't disturb it. There's generally enough moisture right now on the leaves themselves, so it's just that perfect moisture level. Put them in that bin and just let them sit over the winter. And then by springtime, you can dump it out. And you should have a really nice kind of a brown-looking leaf material. Mm-hmm. And, it's just molding it. It's just the natural fungus and molds will take care of it. You see, the same thing happens if you pile it outside, but it's just because there's so much fresh air around that they don't mold quite as quickly as they do when they're in a container of some sort. So
doesn't matter if I... out in the street, there's quite a few leaves where you drive up, and I was thinking of cleaning those up too, but it doesn't matter how wet they are.
No, and actually having a mixture of different species, different types of leaves is usually a nice thing, only because some of the thicker leaves, when they break down, they stay sort of more, they have more texture to them, whereas the thinner leaves tend to be, they kind of disintegrate more and turn in more sort of a mushy or flaky substance.
Oh, okay.
So that's kind of nice to have a mixture of different types of leaves.
Good. I remember a little bit about that, but I didn't remember all of it. And of course, if I'm not doing it, then I don't pay as much attention as if I want to do it. So
yeah, well, it's good to do. Remember that almost a huge portion of the food and the nutrients that plants get in nature comes from those leaves and from leaf mold. And so that's a real natural part of nature and their food supply and everything. And the leaves themselves give off this beautiful organic acid in the springtime. And that acid is just a beautiful thing. It's what really makes all the nutrients really easy for the plants to absorb. And it's just a fabulous thing. So I love leaf mold. It's a good product.
Good, Ken. Well, thank you very much.
All right, Rick. Thanks for calling.
Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye. Yeah, there you go. I'd really, I really want to hear from people who love leaf mold, and I'd like to hear some results in the springtime too when our show continues on. Of course, we do go year round, and in the spring, I'd like to hear, lots of people are experimenting with leaf mold and trying to, just play with it a little bit. It's a fabulous product, and I'm going to do some myself, and I have to do it this weekend because the time is ticking along, and this week it's going to get cold, so it's much more difficult to pick up those leaves once the ground freezes. But I do want to mention that you may already know, and some of our regular listeners know, that in February, Dawn and I take a trip to the Northwest Flower and Garden Show in Seattle. And we do this each February, and sometimes it's early February, sometimes it's late February. This year it's on the 23rd of February, so it's a little bit later. And the Northwest Flower and Garden Show is one of the biggest garden shows pretty much anywhere, but in North America it's the second largest show. And we really enjoy taking a busload of people down, and we're filling that bus right now. It's starting to fill up quite nicely, and we want to make sure that it's full. And so we are mentioning it on the show that all you have to do is you can phone Sun Fun Tours to get more information on that. You can also go to their website, which is sunfuntours.ca. And, of course, once you're there, they have a great site, and you can pick each month if you want to see what other tours they have. They have all kinds of tours going on. And in the month of February, on the 23rd, you'll see the Northwest Flower and Garden Show with Don Burnett and Ken Salvail. And, all you have to do is click on that. You can sign up right there. And it shows all the costs and everything involved and what's going to happen. The theme this year is A Taste of Spring. So that sounds pretty good. It's kind of a general thing, but I bet there's going to be a lot of bulbs. In the past, they always have these beautiful, just oceans of bulbs that you get to enjoy while you're there. The fragrance in these halls are just spectacular. But I can imagine that this year will be even more. And the primulas, my favorite really is the primula. There's so many primulas out there, and these shows, they'll often have just oceans of primula blooming away, and it's quite amazing. So it's a real worthwhile trip. They have landscape displays, and they have all kinds of gardening tools and items, and it just goes on and on. There's floors and floors and rooms of stuff. It's just amazing. It takes, in 2 days, you just barely see it all, but it certainly is a fun trip. And then on the way back, we always stop at Brian Minter's place to stop in and see what's going on there, and generally Brian gives us a little private talk and gardening lecture that he always gives us is always great. So it's a fun trip. Again, that's February the 23rd. Now, just on another note, we did mention that Santa's arriving at 11 at Bylands. If you're just tuning in, so if you do have kids around, you can always scoop them up and run over to Bylands and watch that spectacle that happens at 11 a.m. today. And we did also mention that in Peachland, there's the market that's happening there today in the right downtown, and Linda phoned in and reminded us of that, and that's going to be a great event. So it's easy to find, just down on Main Street there. Just head that way, and I'm sure you'll see all the excitement going on and people parking and signs and everything. So that'll be a fun day as well. And you pick up some homemade items as well as some artwork and wine, apparently. So that should be a fun trip for everyone. So on that note, our time right now is 9:30. We do invite your calls, 862-2525, to get through this morning. We're talking a little bit about pruning today, and right at this point, not really a huge amount of pruning to be done. You can always remove dead wood from plants, because dead wood can go anytime. When do you remove dead wood? Well, whenever you see it, that's when you remove it. So it can be done at any time. And but a lot of our main pruning, like of shade trees and even fruit trees and things, are typically done in the month of February and sometimes end of January sort of timing. You want to be able to see the full structure of the tree, and it's always nice to get up in a tree, but you have to be really careful because pruning trees is a dangerous business. And when you get into bigger trees, you always make sure you hire a professional. And especially, arborists that are certified and that do all the safety requirements before they go up into a tree. With climbers, guys who climb trees and prune, they have to have two climbers there. You have to have the guy who climbs the tree and one ground guy who's also a climber. Just in case there's an emergency in that tree, the other guy can climb up that tree and give him some assistance. So that's a WCB regulation. And it's a rule we have to follow. And with trees, a very dangerous business to be in the tree business. And so just as a heads up, that's why you always hire reputable companies that have the proper insurance and everything, and people who know what they're doing. Very, very important. And one of these things that again we do see commonly, and it's the worst thing, is ladders. Whenever you get on a ladder in a tree, if the ladder's leaning on the tree, there could be a major problem there, and that's where you'll often see what you see on the funniest home videos actually is people who lean their ladders on trees often end up injured. So these freestanding ladders are much better. And even with that, when you get into taller stuff, bigger trees, we always say just, leave it to the professionals and save yourself from potential injury. So that's basically that for that. And so what I'm going to do is we're going to just take another short break here. Do remind you to give me a call at 250-862-2525 to get through today. And we'll be back with more AM 1150 Garden Show. The show. Thank you for tuning in today. 862-2525. If you have any gardening questions or any questions about possibly irrigation. We've been talking in the past couple of weeks just a little bit about irrigation and winterizing and that sort of thing. Really important that you have efficient irrigation systems. I think in 2017, this will be, something that will be emphasized a lot, will be for people to really pay attention to their irrigation systems and possibly even have them audited. One of these things that we do when we do an audit is that the entire system is run and pressurized and checked and double-checked, because often there's water just running underground. And you can have lines that are broken, split, or just incorrectly pieced together, and a huge amount of water is wasted. If you ever want to know how much water your system uses, that you take most irrigation systems run between around 9 gallons per minute, 9 to 10 gallons per minute. And so all you have to do is know how many minutes that your sprinklers run, and you know how much water you've used. And so you can imagine if you have a leak underground, and the leak underground is, say, 2 gallons per minute or so, or 3 gallons per minute, that's a lot of water. And you start doing the math times, 60 minutes in an hour, and sometimes these systems can leak for long periods of time. You can literally be leaking, thousands of gallons of water in a very short period of time. So just be cognizant of that, and make a note for 2017 to have your system checked, audited, or spend time learning more about your irrigation system to help conserve water. I think that's a really important thing for 2017. All right, we're going to go back to the phone lines. We have Mary on the line. Good morning, Mary.
Hi. I was wondering about my hydrangea. It's still blooming really good. Should I cut it down now, or should I wait till spring?
I would just leave it and let it bloom and just enjoy it for now. It's going to be cold next week, so that might, be the end of the blooming time.
Yeah, sure.
But you might as well just let it go. And, if the bloom heads are sometimes they turn a little bit brown, but they still look nice with a bit of snow on them,
Yeah.
So.
Oh yeah, they're beautiful.
Yeah.
And in the spring, how low do I cut them, or what?
Well, that's a good question. What color are yours?
Oh, a pretty kind of a deep rose.
A deep rose color, nice. So with those, likely it is a macrophylla type, which is the mop head types, and they generally come in a pink tone. So it's a round ball-shaped flower?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So then that, as that goes through the wintertime, that head it might collapse. If it starts to collapse, then you can cut those ones off. The stems that bloom this year can be completely removed, and then the stems that grew this year that didn't flower are the ones that we often keep to bloom next year.
Okay.
So that's how I like to do them.
I removed the ones that bloomed this year, eh?
Yeah, that's right.
I've never had it bloom as nice as it did this year. It was just a solid mass, just solid.
Yeah, and that tells me, just from that description, that they bloom better this year than other years. And we know for sure it was a macrophylla variety. And the reason is that when you get cold winters, like a cold snap, then the upper buds on those stems will freeze off, and then you get kind of poor blooming, But this last winter we had was so mild that all the hydrangeas were just spectacular this year. They bloomed just beyond anything that we've seen.
Yeah, because last year, you know what it did? It only had one blossom on it.
Oh, yeah. That's right, and that's because of the cold snap, and not cut. Try not to cut them back as hard, right? As I said, is that the key is try to keep some of those upper buds alive through the winter, and what that means is that anything that bloomed this year, cut those ones out, and anything that didn't bloom can be kept. Generally, at least down to a foot, 1 foot. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because they're pretty tall. Okay, thank you very much, and you have a Merry Christmas.
Yeah, Merry Christmas to you, Mary. Okay. Bye-bye. Yeah, that's an interesting thing. Hydrangeas are a funny bunch because there's so many different types, and the macrophyllus, if anybody in Kelowna, in the whole Okanagan Valley, where people have been growing macrophyllus for years and years, and they usually get 2, 3, 4, 5 blooms per plant. Well, this year they had 20 or more blooms per plant, and that's just that the buds survived last winter. It was a milder winter. So the buds came through. They thought they were in Vancouver, so they all came through, and they were successful, and they flowered and did their thing, and it was quite spectacular. We had quite a few calls and chats with people, and just observation driving around Kelowna. There were some spectacular hydrangeas around town that were doing fabulous. So 2 things. One is, if you know not to prune them too much, to preserve those upper buds. And that helps to keep the blooms going on from year to year. And then if you have a mild winter, of course, then that does help. I remember years ago, clients telling me they used to take like chicken wire or fencing wire, and they'd put it around their hydrangea, and then they'd fill the whole thing with leaves right to the top. And what that would do would be to protect those upper buds. And then, after winter, they just pull that cage off, and then they'd clean up all those leaves, and lo and behold, the tops of the plants would survive the winter, and they'd have a really good bloom. And that thinking, too, that the flower heads that are on this year, those stems are less likely to produce flowers than the ones that didn't produce any flowers this year. So it's almost like... some types of plants, they do that. They'll bloom good on last year's wood. And that's the way it goes with these macrophylla type hydrangeas, the ones that kind of like it a bit cooler, a little bit shady. Those are the ones that they call them the mop head types, and they typically come in pinks or a bluey purpley color. The other hydrangeas are either have cone-shaped flowers, or they'll have these flatter panicle white blooms, the Annabelle types, white flower heads, and these ones, none of that applies to these other types of hydrangeas. So just the macrophylla ones. But it's really good to know. When you go out and you're looking for plants, you need a plant for a shady spot. Well, that's often a good choice. Is one of these macrophylla varieties. They will often do very well in a part shaded area. They like to have a little bit of composty soil, so you dig the bed before you plant them, and they're pretty happy. They're not a drought tolerant plants. They like to have some moisture, but really good plant and strong blooming all summer long. All right, we're going to go back to the phone line. We have Jackie on the line. Good morning, Jackie.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thanks. How are you today?
Very good, thanks. My begonias are still in my backyard in a pot and looking absolutely beautiful.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I think the weather's going to change. So.
I know.
Yeah.
I only have a few more days to enjoy them, but I'm thinking they've been in there since May.
Right.
And they were in the front of the house to begin with because it has more shade. Mm-hmm. So then when the weather, I thought, was going to turn colder, I put them in the back yard, which faces south and west.
Perfect.
And they're absolutely gorgeous.
Wow. Well, that is amazing. This must be almost a world's record for Kelowna to have begonias blooming at this time of year.
I know, especially begonias. They're so sensitive to frost.
Mm-hmm. They sure are. Their tissues are so soft and delicate.
Yes.
Well, that's fabulous, Jackie. That's really positive. Have you taken some pictures of them?
Oh yeah, I have lots of pictures on my phone, my telephone. So
good.
Yeah, I've sent them out to friends.
Well, that's great. Well, I'd love to see a picture of it. If there's any way you could send one to my email, It's just ken@kelownagardens.com.
Ken@kelownagardens.com?
Yeah.
I'll write that down.
Yeah, send me a picture. I just love seeing success stories like that, and it's just amazing to see something blooming in December.
I know.
Unbelievable.
It's amazing. All right. It's kind of like a miracle.
It almost is, yeah. Well, that's fabulous. And you're going to bring them in, do you think, or
no?
Just let them go and start new next year.
Yes.
Well, that's very cool. Okay,
all right.
Jackie.
You have a good day.
You too. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you too.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye. Wow, that is amazing. We have noticed that other annuals are still out there and still blooming away, but begonias, wow, they're so fragile. It's amazing that they're doing so well. But that was really smart. That was really smart of Jackie to move them from the cooler side to the warmer side of the house in the fall once the temperatures started to go down a bit. So very, very good idea. All right, so we do have time for a couple more calls. We're going to take another short break, 862-2525 to get through this morning. And, anything at all you want to chat about, feel free to call. So we'll be back right after these messages with more AM 1150 Garden Show. Alrighty, welcome back to the AM 1150 Garden Show. We are going to go back to the phone lines. We have Olive on the line. Good morning, Olive.
Sorry, I forgot to ask you a couple of things, and I hope it's okay. Thank you.
You bet.
Thanks a lot. I just quickly wanted to say, should I be changing the soil? These one plants have been in there for about 4 or 5 years, and they have been getting really lovely soil. Food from one of the farms in the farmers market there that fed them really well. So the soil has been really fed good for the plants. So
right. Yeah, I don't know if I would change the soil, but when they get overgrown, then when you go up a pot size, then you just add fresh soil around them. So, and by doing that leaching, I talked about leaching a plant, putting it in the sink and letting the water run through. That really helps to replenish the soil. It washes away built-up salts and things, and it kind of replenishes the gases, like the fresh oxygen in there, and so you don't really have to change the soil.
So I'd have to take them right out of the soil and do that?
No, you just set the whole pot into the...
they're in a great big one.
That's right. Now I remember. You have the planter on the deck.
Right.
Yeah. No, you don't really have to change it, but you just add fresh soil to the surface of it.
Oh, okay.
And that's really all you really need to do, and you should be fine.
And the long, they've grown to a long, spindly... stalks, should I be cutting them down or anything?
No, I don't think so. I would just leave them. That's how they grow. That we're talking about kale, right? So the kale grows tall and lanky, and sometimes it kind of spreads or leans over.
Yeah,
and that's normal. That's what they do.
Oh, super! Oh, thank you so much, because they've been giving me tons of lovely kale, and I've been even giving it away. I had so much. So
that's fabulous. So it's nice to hear about your success.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Olive. Take care.
You. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, and we have Addie on the line. Good morning, Addie.
Good morning, Ken. How are you?
Good, thanks. How are you today?
I'm fine, thanks. I'm still putting away some of my pots. The lady that phoned earlier said about her begonia still blooming. I still have some blooming, but mine, I couldn't move mine to the southwest side because it's in a great big pot that I can't move. So, but I was thinking of taking mine out. This is the first time that I've grown begonias, and I've had great success. And I was thinking of taking them out of the pot and saving them now. How would I do that?
Well, some types of begonias will save easier than others. Some types don't really want to be saved. And so, but what I would do is, if you want to try, is just basically, if you have like an old pot or a nursery pot or something, then you just go out and you just cut around the base of that, like you're digging up the begonia out of the pot. So probably only about 4 or 5 inches deep around it, and about maybe 10 inches wide. And you just carefully lift that whole piece of soil out and keep it dry, because they don't like to be wet. especially in storage. So then just set that thing into a nursery pot or even into a cardboard box if you want, and just put that into the basement, but not like in the garage like you would with some other plants. That these ones need to be just a little warmer. They need to be somewhere in that 8 or 10 degrees Celsius. If your garage is in that range, it might be okay. But if it's too cold,
I'd have to bring it in. But my basement is warm though, so
I'd
probably be better off not to bother saving it, not to save myself the chore of digging it out and saving it.
Yeah, they're a little finicky, like I've tried myself and I haven't had great success. The ones that form the big tubers, those ones are much easier to overwinter because
mine have the big tubers. It's large.
Oh, well, if you've got the big tubers, then you've got much better success rate than those ones. You can do, like I say, just dig around them, keep that tuber with a little bit of soil on it so that it stays, you actually want to keep it dry. So make sure it dries out. And then you can keep it in the garage, those ones. But what you do is you put them in a cupboard or something where against the main wall, if you have a cupboard or something that you can stash them in. And you put them in the back there, and then they're kind of just buffered from when the door opens and closes and that sort of thing.
Okay, the other thing is I've got some canna lilies mixed up with some gladiolas in a pot. Mm-hmm. Can I just cut them down and leave them in that pot, or should I take them and shake them out?
No, I would just leave them all in there.
And just bring it into the garage?
Yep, you bet. They'll be fine.
Super. Great. Thanks a lot, Ken. You have a nice weekend.
You too. Thanks, Addie. Thanks for calling. Bye-bye. All right, and we have Thana on the line. Good morning, Thana.
Good morning, Tim. I have 4 plots of gazinias that are still in full bloom.
Nice.
Up on my porch.
Mm-hmm.
And it's facing south. And I was wondering, can I keep those over winter?
Ooh, that is a really good question. I've never tried to keep gazinias over winter before. That is a very good question. You might want to just maybe try a little bit of research on that. I don't believe so. Mm-hmm. But, what I always say about plants is that when you grow a certain plant, you always try to find out where it came from. So you do a little research on it and you find out where do these plants originate from, and then you can kind of tell by that what it does in the wintertime. And then if they're in a place where it's, let's say, maybe it's Siberia, so they're going to survive, anything. Yeah. But on the other hand, maybe it's at the equator, or maybe it's in a desert, or maybe it's in Iran, or maybe it's in South Africa, or maybe it's in Canada. So you learn where it comes from, and then that'll give you a clue as to how to overwinter it. But as far as I know, they're mostly just you save the seed and keep them from year to year.
I've done that.
Yeah.
Okay. And then in the seed, when do I plant the seed then in the spring?
Quite late. When I say late, I mean end of March sort of timing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
all right. And the plant, the label has bloomiq.com, so I could just go to that.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's what you do, and you'll learn a lot more. And then actually, there's so many plants out there that you just have to do the research to find out what to do with them sometimes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's awesome, but I can still plant the seeds. So I took seeds off all 4 different colors. So.
Well, and that's interesting. So now this will be a learning thing for you and for everybody, because when you get the seeds, they won't necessarily be the same color as the original plant. So when you pick those different colors, it's going to be really cool to see what you get. You might get a completely different mixture.
Oh, yeah, because the one that I really like is the rose stripe.
Oh, yes. It's got it's got almost a brownish stripe on the petals.
Mm-hmm. They're beautiful.
Very
beautiful.
Cool. Yeah.
But, okay, I have the seeds all separated, so I'll see what I get. Maybe I'll phone you in the spring.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thanks,
Okay.
Thana.
All right. Merry Christmas to you.
Merry Christmas to you, too.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks for calling. Yeah, that's so cool. And that's the thing. There's so many plants out there. It's just it's a fabulous world. There's so much we can do. And let's just try and experiment. And, a lot of these things, Don and I will know the answers because we've experienced a lot of different things. But there's always stuff out there. There's the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know. And that's just the way it goes. But on that note, I think we're going to go to the tips of the week. So we're going to do that now. All right, my tip of the week this week was this winter, plan on taking some gardening classes. There's all kinds of gardening things that go on in the community. I'm going to be putting on some gardening classes myself this year around the end of January and through the month of February, just to stimulate the senses, get out there and get excited about spring. And you'd be surprised at how many things you can do actually in late winter and early spring. There's so many plants that love to get out in the garden and things you can get started indoors. My plant of the week this week was the Japanese azalea, the florist azalea, which we can buy at almost any time of the year, but it just seems to be really one of the best plants to have over the Christmas holidays. It's just a fabulous plant. And remember that azaleas love to be kept cool and moist at all times. We talked about poinsettias, that they actually like to go dry a little bit more between waterings. But not so much for the azaleas. They'd rather be almost wet, but really cool plant, beautiful blooms, and a well worth plant to have. And so long blooming, that's just what's so great about them. But that's my tips and plants for this week. Remember to check KelownaGardens.com. And again, on that note, we will just say that we will be back again next week. And remember our Christmas show that's coming up on the 17th of December, where we'll be inviting all kinds of people to call in and give their best to their friends and things. And we have some special guests that call in from all around Canada and sometimes Mexico and sometimes England. We have all kinds of gardeners out there that like to call in and participate in our Christmas show. So on that note, we will see you again next week with more AM 1150 Garden Show.